Welcome to Watch the Booker Man and to Impact Wrestling 2012, the second week of 4 weeks of build to Destination X 2012, a pay-per-view which already looked to take shape on what was a very, very chaotic episode of Impact Wrestling last week. We started right out of the gate with the suspension of Samoa Joe, leading to CM Punk and Jeff Hardy's match being made to main event that pay-per-view. We also had Hamada and Gail Kim confirmed, Hamada the next challenger to Gail's Knockouts Championship, as well as Austin Aries versus Tyler Black in a very, very personal match between two former members of that New Age of Honor stable. As well as that, a lot of other angles had their wheels go into motion, and we're going to follow up on all of that, so I'm not going to go through everything. No matches were confirmed last week for this week's show, which again, it's something I said I would do, but in the opening segment tonight, we get a very, very big main event announced for this show, so I'm not too worried about that. But with that said, let's get into Impact Wrestling for this week. And it is Tyler Black who opens the show, making his way down to the ring, and as he does this, the commentators put over tonight's main event, the Kings of Wrestling of the New Age Originals versus the New Age of Honor's American Wolves. They also say that there is a scheduled sit-down interview between CM Punk and Jeff Hardy, the champion and challenger for the pay-per-view's main event, and that'll be mediated by Mike Tenay. Once Tyler Black is in the ring, he touches on tonight's main event, but he has another matter to settle tonight. He calls out Jimmy Jacobs, and he says that it's fitting given how far they go back, given that Tyler Black was the first man that Jimmy Jacobs contacted about the three of them coming to the company. It's only fitting that they do this one-to-one. The leader of the New Age does come out, but hesitates at the top of the ramp. He can see how angry that Tyler Black is, and he doesn't want to get beat up by him, basically. He is then joined by Austin Aries, who looks to offer some moral support and maybe wants to help intimidate his Destination X opponent. However, Jacobs makes it clear that he wants to do this alone. Once they're both in the ring, Tyler asks Jimmy a simple question after everything they've been through, after all they've done together, after the fact that they put their entire lives into making this movement what it was. Why did he do what he did 2 weeks ago? Jimmy Jacobs doesn't have an answer. Instead, he wants to ask Tyler the same question. Why, when they had everything, when they had the strength in numbers, when they had the momentum, when the New Age of Honor had the potential to be stronger than ever with him and Steve Corino leading the charge, why did the Kings and Tyler do what they did? Tyler says that this was never about their goals, was never about the bigger picture for Steve Corino. He was brought in to serve one man's goals, that being CM Punk, and now that he's got exactly what he wanted, now that that man stands on a perch at the top of this company, they serve no purpose together. Steve Corino comes out as Black is trying to convince Jimmy Jacobs of this and accuses him of trying to manipulate the man who has been like a father figure to him. Tyler steps up to Corino in response. He doesn't want to hear from this smug guy. He doesn't want him getting involved in what is really sort of a personal thing between Jimmy Jacobs and Tyler Black. He doesn't feel that it's anybody else's business. Jacobs holds Black back. He doesn't want this getting physical because by the sounds of it, he still maybe harbours hope of a reconciliation. But as he does this, Corino takes a pen from his inside pocket and stabs it in the eye of Tyler Black. So if last week's show was pretty brutal and chaotic, we're not stopping with the violence tonight. A really sort of not common wrestling thing to do, a pen in someone's eye, but anybody who can imagine that basically knows how painful that'd be. Quickly, medics run to the scene to help Tyler Black for what could be a serious eye injury, and while Jacobs initially shows some concern, those feelings, though, that friendship isn't completely lost, but ultimately he follows as Corino leaves the ring. Tyler Black apparently has a gimmick that's getting stale, and it's an okay segment to open up the show and to advance our New Age at War storyline. It says it got the show to a strong start and got the crowd hotter, so no complaints with that. We come back then from the break to Roderick Strong and the Young Bucks, members of that newly formed stable with Kevin Steen and Paul London, and they defeat Colt Cabana and the Motor City Machine Guns in 10 minutes and 42 when Roderick Strong pins Colt Cabana with a half Nelson backbreaker. It says that Alex Shelley was head and shoulders above everybody else. We can see that with his 82, and Colt Cabana with a 41 the weak link. Not much better from Roderick Strong, it has to be said, but this is not a case of Colt Cabana and Roderick Strong not having the ability, but rather that we've not booked them that strongly. Of course, with the heel turn, Roderick Strong and the Young Bucks, to be fair, who have been semi-regularly featured throughout this entire save, but who probably don't have the win-loss record that you might hope for such talented wrestlers. That's something that, with Steen and London by their side, we are looking to correct. And really, it plays into the storyline. Strong and the Young Bucks weren't doing that well, and that's why Steen and London felt they were recruitable, and they were some guys who they could help out. And it looks like it's got off to a good start, at least, with Strong and Young Bucks picking up that win. Following the match, the victorious trio are joined by Kevin Steen and Paul London, who were in the back throughout, so it was a clean victory as well, we have to say. Matt Jackson, Nick Jackson, Shelley and Sabin were sort of equals in the match, and it was the fact that Strong had too much for Colt Cabana that picked up the win, and it looks like they're ready to add insult and likely further injury to injury after the match. Coming out, El Generico was clearly prepared for this possibility, and he is then joined by Bryan Danielson and Desmond Wolfe. Of course, during Desmond Wolfe's main event match with CM Punk last week, Bryan Danielson was attacked in the back by members of this group, so they all fight together to fight off the 5 men with the help of the Motor City Machine Guns, who are able to come back round and help them out. Colt Cabana's still down from the big finisher that Roderick Strong hit him with. The X Division champion and the World Tag Team champions stand tall in the ring, flanked by Shelley and Sabin, who first check on Colt Cabana, and this 5-man group has found their match maybe, or certainly found their next rivals, with 3 of the champions of the company and the Motor City Machine Guns, and of course Colt Cabana is unlikely to be going anywhere, so a good storyline I think to take Roderick Strong, Matt Jackson, Nick Jackson, Steen and London into, and perhaps setting up some future title matches there. We then go to a room in the back where Angelina Love and Velvet Sky are shown speaking to somebody who is not on screen. The beautiful people are pitching to this person the new Beautiful People show. They've hired their own personal cameraman, well, one of the boys that they found doing nothing in catering, and they want to give never before seen access to the Knockouts locker room. However, they need some help with this project. The camera then pans across the room where we see a sleazy looking Larry Sweeney, and he asks if we're going to see everything, and he's smirking as Angelina Love and Velvet Sky nod their heads. Sweeney's ears prick up at the prospect of this. He thinks that this is going to be a great idea, going to be a real ratings grabber, and he's happy to be involved with whatever the beautiful people have in mind. However, he might need to ask a favour in return from the beautiful people before they get this up and running. He points at the cameraman that they have and say it's probably best that he stops rolling while they get down to business. We then get a video package from the previous, or recapping the previous episode of Evolve Wrestling, where the Super X Cup began with 4 fantastic first round matches. There were victories for Kenny Omega, Extreme Tiger, TJ Perkins and Kota Ibushi, who advanced to the second round of this tournament. The winner of the Super X Cup will go on to face El Generico for the X Division Championship at the upcoming Destination X pay-per-view. Of course, I put all that tournament out as one video, so if you've not seen that, here's an idea of the type of talent that is involved in that, and I would recommend checking that one out. I just thought that it was a decent way to put it out, to have the tournament contained within one video, and the fact it was all at the same taping kind of lends itself to that. The second match of the night is a squash match with one of the guys who lost on Evolve. Jay Lethal defeats Erez in 2 minutes and 1 second with a lethal injection. It's a good performance from Jay Lethal. That's what we want to see. Our heel push of him certainly seems to be working there, and obviously Erez isn't going to do that well, and it's not going to be that good of a rating of a match, but it's all about continuing to build that momentum for Jay Lethal, who I would say as a heel, he got a good run as a face quite early on in the save, but this is his best push for quite some time now. Jay Lethal takes a microphone after the dominant victory. He's barely broken a sweat, and he reiterates the fact that he's moving on from AJ Styles. He gives credit to the Phenomenal One for taking doctor's advice this time and staying away. He adds that last week when he listed all the titles that he's won in this company, one was missing. I would just like to know at this point, AJ Styles isn't supposed to be on screen here. This is an off-screen role because Jay Lethal's talking about him. I've obviously just messed that up when I set up the angle, but AJ Styles not on screen here. Jay Lethal then begins to state his claim for an Impact World Championship shot, using that victory over a former champion AJ Styles as evidence of him deserving that. Kurt Angle comes out and praises the ambition of Jay Lethal, but don't know if he's heard, there's already a title match set for Destination X. Furthermore, AJ Styles didn't stay home on Doctor's advice tonight, but on Kurt's. The only way he could convince him to take that extra week off to recover is to let him know the plans for the following week. Next week on Impact Wrestling, in our main event, AJ Styles will go one-on-one with Jay Lethal. Jay Lethal isn't happy about this. His whole point of the last 2 weeks has been that he's moving on, but Kurt keeps him sweet by telling him that if he can beat AJ Styles again, then he will be in line for an Impact World Championship shot, so not specifying when or where that'll take place, but a promise from Kurt Angle that if Jay Lethal can beat what we presume will be a much better conditioned AJ Styles next week on Impact, then he will be in contention for the world title. A recap is shown from earlier tonight, which features the arrival of Shelton Benjamin at the building, aided by crutches after the last attack from Charlie Haas last week has left him unable to walk unsupported. A little bit later, we saw that Charlie Haas arrived, but because Shelton was in the building, he was told that he wasn't allowed to enter the Von Braun Center. Haas kicked off with security again, but ultimately the numbers meant that he was led away. Shelton Benjamin is then interviewed by Jeremy Borash live, as it were, explaining that he simply doesn't understand the actions of Charlie Haas. They've had issues before, they've had disagreements within their run in Impact Wrestling, but nothing like this. Despite him being in no condition to compete, Shelton felt that it was important that he be here tonight to speak with Kurt Angle. This has come out of nowhere for Shelton. He's still processing why Charlie Haas did what he did, but the pain that he's been in for the last 2 weeks means that he doesn't want any motive. That's not what he's looking for. He's looking for revenge. As he speaks, Kurt Angle, who has made his way back from the ring having spoke with Jay Lethal, approaches Shelton Benjamin, and Shelton tells Kurt that he wants Charlie Haas at Destination X, and he wants it to be in a match where anything goes after Haas attacked him with a steel chair last week. Kurt asks if he's sure that he'll be 100% by then, and Shelton Benjamin insists that he will be. Besides, if he isn't, maybe Haas will last more than a couple of minutes with him this time. This gets a little bit of a laugh from Kurt Angle, who is sort of trying to remain neutral despite clearly Haas being the one in the wrong here. He says that basically the match is going to happen as long as Shelton Benjamin can prove that he is healthy enough to compete. Both guys doing well there, getting a green note each, but we do lose heat to the storyline. I feel like by the pay-per-view we will have been able to build that back up though. A decent match ends the first hour as Hamada picks up another huge victory, perhaps the biggest win of the year for her in 9 minutes and 46 with a Hamada driver. However, it may be the biggest win on paper, but we can see that Angelina Love and Velvet Sky, seemingly this is the favour that Larry Sweeney asked for, and the commentators put over that fact, and Mickie James is distracted by Angelina Love, distracted by Velvet Sky, which allows Hamada to pick up the victory. Concerning that it's only a 49, she has definitely done better than that previously. It's a win for Hamada that can only do good things. Mickie James with another defeat, but we feel like now is the best time to give her this defeat, and it's a huge win for Hamada, so I think that it helps Hamada more than it hurts Mickie James, especially while Mickie is between storylines. We could say she's lost to Gail Kim, and it's something that I probably tend to do. I don't know if it's something that's been noticeable, but if you've lost a big match, I think that sometimes you can get away, not everybody, but sometimes you can get away with having somebody lose a match again the week after, because generally, or in the case of Mickie James now, the storyline's sort of going to be, where does she go? She's been so caught up with Tara. She's been so caught up with the Knockouts Championship for basically her entire run. She was also Knockouts Tag Team Champion. She's been so busy and non-stop since she came into the company almost 18 months ago that now there's this little lull. Where does Mickie James go? However, in the short term, we can see that she's probably going to want some revenge on the beautiful people. As her arm is raised in the ring, Hamada doesn't really understand why the beautiful people have got themselves involved. She didn't stop them because it helped her to victory, but as they continue laying into Mickie James in the ring, she just watches on. Sweeney's smirk giving away his involvement in what happened. Gail runs down to make the save, with Hamada rolling out of the ring. She wants nothing to do with Gail, having been in a hard-fought match with Mickie, but Gail's not really there for Hamada. She's there to clear the ring of Angelina Love and Velvet Sky, which she does single-handedly, hitting an eat defeat to Velvet to put an exclamation mark on the save. She checks on Mickie James, who is down in the ring, while keeping her eye on Hamada. Hamada clearly didn't want the help of the beautiful people, but is more focused on her upcoming Knockouts Championship challenge than getting into any bickering with Larry Sweeney or the beautiful people. She is 100% focused, and nothing is going to change that. Not a great segment because it has some less over people in, losing heat to our Knockouts Championship storyline, but like I said with a previous segment, plenty enough time to build those storylines back up. We return to the second hour of the show where Bad Influence come down, and I've just noticed the red notes here and that it's not a very good rated segment. Disappointing, but I'm more interested in the storyline than the in-game ratings. The Briscoes attacked Beer Money last week with beer bottles, and Daniels and Kazarian now in the ring say that they'd asked for the footage to be shown on the screen, but quite frankly they don't want to see it. They're here to call out the Briscoes. Daniels says that Mark and Jay claim to be these big tough country boys, but last week was an act of cowardice, there's no question about that. When they came out last week, Daniels says that Fortune were ready to announce that they were going their separate ways. Daniels was going to do his own thing, Frankie was going to do his own thing, as were Beer Money. But now, more than ever, they see that they're not just a stable of wrestlers, they're a family. He doesn't expect an answer now that they'll have to fight them man to man, face to face, but he calls out the Briscoes nonetheless. Jay Briscoe and Mark Briscoe do come out, and Jay grabs a microphone saying that if they think that the Briscoes will ever back down from a fight, then they either haven't been paying attention or they're completely crazy. However, before they reach the ring, they march down looking like they're ready for this brawl, but then stop. Jay says that it's funny because Fortune's issue is exactly the same as the Briscoes. The Briscoes sat at home, they watched Evolve 2 weeks ago when Daniels and Kazarian, Storm and Rude aired their grievances, and they thought that they had a lot in common. The Briscoes were sent home, they were told that Impact would call them when they needed them, but that call didn't come, just like it didn't come for Daniels and Kazarian. And that's the exact reason that they're not going to fight Bad Influence right now. These people want to see Bad Influence get their hands on Jay and Mark Briscoe, and that's exactly why they're going to head out. The Briscoes are going to get paid to beat them down. If they want the match, they better talk to Kurt Angle, and he can book the boys whose faces don't seem to fit on this television program. So again, setting up Jay and Mark Briscoe as this. It's that promo that I've seen a lot of times, the cosmetically pleasing promo from the Briscoes. Now, the landscape of Impact Wrestling, it's not really like that, but I think that the Briscoes setting themselves up as these outsiders, as these sort of guys who don't feel like TV wrestlers in a way. I don't quite know what I mean by that, to be fair, because we've got all different styles on the roster, but they've got this rugged, raw style, and I think that it lends itself to this type of gimmick, and I think that them backing down from a fight here isn't an act of cowardice, but rather they've always been guys who are about providing for their family by any means necessary, and they're using the attack on Beer Money and the attention that it's getting them to basically put it in Kurt Angle's court, that if he wants to see it, and if Bad Influence want to get their revenge, then they're going to have to book them on Impact Wrestling or at Destination X whenever that match may take place. Awesome Kong and Rosita, the Knockouts Tag Team Champions, defeat Jazz and ODB in 4 minutes and 54. Rosita tagged in after Awesome Kong has done the majority of the work to hit a moonsault. I'm thinking that they do the tag team moonsault of basically Rosita throwing herself off Awesome Kong to do the moonsault, or even if it's just a splash, some kind of move that is assisted by Kong's size. Kong head and shoulders with a 71. That's really, really good to see. And the plans that I have for Kong in the next few months, well, it basically solidifies that those ideas are correct. She's carrying Rosita, but that's the nature of the tag team, the odd couple who stand tall following their victory. Awesome Kong letting Rosita get the plaudits, but we do put over that she did do almost all of the work. Going to the back, Jeremy Borash interviews Alyssa Flash and Sarah Del Rey, asking for their reaction to another decisive victory for the Impact Knockouts Tag Team Champions, Awesome Kong and Rosita. Alyssa Flash formally announces their intentions to challenge for the Impact Knockouts Tag Team Championships, albeit both women struggling off script. It's something that I knew. I thought I had scripted these for this promo because I've noticed a lot of times that Flash and Del Rey do struggle off script, so just an oversight there, which is quite annoying. they ask Kurt Angle, or Alyssa Flash says, that they want Kurt Angle to let them know what they need to do, who they need to beat, and whatever else may be necessary to make that match happen. Sarah Del Rey adds that not a lot of women know what it takes to beat Awesome Kong on this Impact Wrestling roster, and a lot of people think that that makes her and Rosita unstoppable. Sarah Del Rey points out that she is the only woman in the history of this company who has a positive win-loss record against Awesome Kong, and she knows that that's going to translate into her and Flash becoming the next Knockouts Tag Team Champions. So I thought an interesting slant on it is that the Awesome Kong unstoppable angle, which is basically what this has been, that Kong is essentially retaining these titles on her own. Well, Sarah Del Rey has got the better of Awesome Kong more times than Kong has got the better of her. You would think that Alyssa Flash is a bit of a mismatch for Rosita, so when these two teams finally go at it, perhaps for the first time you'd make the team with Awesome Kong not the favourites, which sounds like a strange thing to say, but it may well be the case if these two teams do go on to face each other. Returning from the doctor's room, Tyler Black approaches the Kings of Wrestling as they prepare for tonight's main event against the American Wolves. Tyler Black's eye has been patched up, and having been injured by Steve Corino earlier tonight, he's clearly still in a lot of pain. Hero and Castagnoli agree that the best course of action is for Tyler to stay in the back tonight. Even if Austin Aries joins the Wolves at ringside, they can handle it. Black puts up a fight. He wants to be there for his friends, but is eventually convinced that for his own chances against Austin Aries at Destination X, he needs to do this. It might be all well and good playing the martyr tonight, but if he ends up in an even worse condition and Aries beats him or keeps him out of Destination X, that's just going to be even worse. So the three men are in agreement. The Kings of Wrestling going it alone tonight, and Tyler Black will remain in the back. We then get an Evolve Championship match, and this is because the Evolve Wrestling show has been taken over by the Super X Cup this month, and we didn't just want to halt D'Angelo Dineiro's momentum and end the storyline that he's got going on with Adam Pearce. Adam Pearce joins commentary for this match as D'Angelo Dinero defeats Kenny King, who is a wrestler with a 1-0 record this year. He won his only match on Evolve. That's the basis for him getting the Evolve Wrestling title shot, because the Evolve title is basically a TV title where it's not necessarily rankings or number one contendership. It's more just someday, if you pick up a win, pick up a couple of wins, then you might get a shot at that title, and it's an open opportunity type thing. Having spent the entire match on commentary complaining specifically about the referee of the Evolve Championship match tonight and the one when he faced D'Angelo Dinero a couple of weeks ago, Paul Turner, Adam Pearce leaves the desk and stares down D'Angelo Dinero from the top of the ramp. While this happens, the commentators say that with the Super X Cup, I've already explained that, the Evolve Wrestling champion will be appearing on Impact Wrestling. This isn't just a one-time thing. D'Angelo Dinero and likely Adam Pearce will be appearing again this month before they go back to Evolve Wrestling, and hopefully, along with the Super X Cup, that can bring some more interest to Evolve Wrestling by overlapping the two circles of that Venn diagram. Cutting to the back, the beautiful people are not happy to have a camera in their faces, particularly Velvet Sky, who ate that eat defeat from Gail Kim not that long ago. They tell their personal cameraman to point the camera elsewhere, which results in him panning across the Knockouts locker room. Unhappy with this, well, everybody's unhappy with it, but Sarita and Taylor Wilde confront Angelina Love and Velvet Sky, saying that they don't appreciate this invasion of privacy. They can do whatever they want to do in front of a camera, but that's not what they want, especially with this creep gesturing to the cameraman in their locker room. A huge argument then breaks out between the four women. The other knockouts in the locker room have to come between them and separate them, but the shouting and yelling continues as we head back to ringside, where the commentators are sort of stalling for time for a little bit before we send to the back, where Mike Tenay is due to have a sit-down interview with the champion and challenger for the Impact World Championship at Destination X, but we see the reason for the stalling was that currently only one of the two seats are occupied. Jeff Hardy has turned up for the interview, but CM Punk is nowhere to be seen. Getting on with it in Punk's absence with no more time, there's a main event to still come, and we've got to get through this, so Jeff Hardy says that he thinks it's actually a blessing in disguise that the champion no-showed this. Not only because it shows exactly the kind of person he is, but we've all heard enough from CM Punk in the last few months. Maybe some people want to see Punk drag up his past all over again, drag up their history, but for Jeff Hardy, this isn't about what's happened before. This is about the here and now. 2012, Impact Wrestling, and this company getting a champion that it deserves. CM Punk has taken every shortcut. He has cheated. He has enlisted the help of the New Age of Honor, of the New Age Originals, of Samoa Joe, of everybody that he possibly could. And while Jeff accepts that he's made mistakes in the past, his present is a whole lot brighter. He's been on a really great run. And as for the future, after over 2 years back in the door, he thinks that it's finally time. He's sure that all the creatures think that it's finally time that he becomes the Impact World Champion. And while there is the justification that Jeff Hardy's had his issues and that's why he's not really been pushed towards the main event, he's been more like a featured act, similar to Sting, I'd say, more than your AJ Styleses and guys like that. I think he's had one title match against Kurt Angle, and that was probably a year and a half ago, something like that. But Jeff Hardy now, finally, with him staying clean or us not having any instance with him for quite some time, I do feel like I can trust him now, and I do feel like after Against All Odds he can put in those main event performances. That means that we can go full steam ahead in trying to push him as the top face. I think especially around this era, Jeff Hardy was so popular with every section of the audience, which is something that's quite rare. You know, John Cena got those split reactions. A lot of people got those split reactions where you're either one for the hardcore fans or one for the younger fans, and obviously Jeff Hardy with his large female following, and everybody was a big fan of Jeff Hardy at a different time. I'd say he was such a great wrestler in the Attitude Era. Then he had a great run in returning to WWE, and hopefully we can capture that lightning in the bottle and get him as one of our top stars in this company. We then go into a fantastic main event, or exceptional as the game puts it, and despite there being a red note about a definite lack of psychology on display, something tells me that that wasn't too much of an issue, because we can see how good the performances are. 83 and 83 from Eddie Edwards and Chris Hero, Davey Richards with a 92 performance of the night, I think, and Claudio Castagnoli with an 89. These guys are just stars, and probably of everybody on the roster we've brought in, I think Aries, Black, Wolves and the Kings are probably the 6 guys that I'm most proud of their progression. I think they've all been booked and protected very, very strongly, and that's what for me makes this a huge main event. The 2 most protected teams in the company, I'd say, fantastic win-loss records throughout their entire time in Impact, and they, again, I don't want to go too much into this, I've mentioned it before, but the likes of those 6 names that I've mentioned are exactly what we want Impact Wrestling to be. The alternative, the different option, and guys with unique wrestling styles. I think Edwards and Richards even influenced a lot of people, or the people they were influenced, they brought it to a bigger stage. I do think that they're probably underrated in their influence, and the Kings of Wrestling, 2 of my favourites, such unique styles of wrestling, but the Wolves do pick up the victory. Davey Richards pinned Claudio Castagnoli after they hit him with their double team finisher. This comes because he was basically isolated. Steve Corino distracting the referee, Austin Aries pulling Hero from the apron and hitting him with a brainbuster on the outside, so he's a non-factor in the rest of the match, and in 15 minutes and 33 the American Wolves are victorious, gaining heat to the New Age at War storyline, of course, with a fantastic 88. Maybe need to have a look at Claudio Castagnoli's gimmick as well as Tyler Black, so I'm wondering if with the face turn it's kind of brought into light that their gimmicks maybe don't fit. Something to look into, but get the crowd buzzing to end the show, and another really good week of Impact. Following the controversial victory, Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards stand tall. Despite winning the battle of the former New Age of Honor tag teams, these guys have sort of run parallel in the last year. Question marks will remain due to the nature of the victory. Cutting to the back, we see that the room that Tyler Black was shown entering to speak with the Kings of Wrestling earlier has been jammed shut, explaining why during the outside interference during the match he wasn't able to get involved. It wasn't a case of him deciding to stay back and protect himself. I'm sure that if Tyler Black had the opportunity, he would have come to the aid of his friends despite their prior agreement, and Austin Aries and Steve Corino may have helped them finish the job, but it is the American Wolves stood tall in the ring as Impact Wrestling goes off the air. And this storyline is about solidifying those 6 guys as top stars, whether they'll go on to singles runs or whether we'll keep the Kings of Wrestling and American Wolves as basically the 2 best tag teams in the world. For my money anyway, I say that. We've got Motor City Machine Guns, we've got Beer Money, fantastic tag team division. That doesn't need mentioning again. Everybody knows that that's one of our strong points, and really happy with that show overall. It's an 83, so it's not as good as last week, and I think there was a little less chaos than last week's show. With us being on a post pay-per-view show last week, you kind of want to have more moving parts, whereas this was about following up everything that's happening and hopefully keeping the intrigue and interest in these storylines as we build to Destination X. Don't really keep up with the ratings for Evolve, but I can imagine with the wrestlers involved not being as popular as the guys we normally use, that's probably not that great of a rating. Bryan Danielson giving Kenny King a rub, perhaps a match we can put on maybe Evolve or even Impact in the coming weeks and see how good they do together. A fantastic rating in fact for Impact. I was going to say decent then, just out of sort of pure habit, but I think that is by some distance, unless I'm forgetting something, our biggest rating so far in terms of television viewership. Oh no, last week was also very, very big. Didn't realise that, but you can see a huge bump following against all odds. Not a clue what's caused that. Maybe we've just gone over a certain threshold, or perhaps it could be to do with a patch, to be fair, but I'm not going to let that be the explanation. It's because the booking's obviously been so great. Word of mouth hearing about how fantastic this promotion is. Maybe not that, but whatever. We're happy with the rating is the point I'm making, and I'm really looking forward to building to Destination X. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you'll join me for the next episode, and all being well, we get the series back on track.